This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you are very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. Today, we are going to be continuing our exploration of royal beasts. My previous video, which I will leave linked, took a look at companion animals. By this I mean the lapdogs, songbirds, monkeys and occasionally cats and guinea pigs that spent their frequently highly pampered lives at court. In this video though, we're going to switch our focus to the Tower of London and to the royal beasts that made their home there. But before we jump into today's topic, I want to say an absolutely massive thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring another video on this channel. Squarespace has made building, updating and managing my website so easy. With Squarespace Blueprint, it's even easier. This guided website design system just asks you a few questions and then helps you to create a well-designed and personal website. You can then make any changes you wish to fonts, colours, images and so on, all through the Fluid Engine editor. And that is so simple, it's just drag and drop. From showing off my most popular videos on YouTube, to hosting my merch store, to managing my mailing list, my Squarespace website offers me everything I need. And as I've mentioned before, I love the fact that I can use Squarespace either through my desktop or laptop, but also through an app on my phone. Whether I'm analysing traffic or editing the website itself, or indeed anything I want to do, I can do that from anywhere. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And then, when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/readingthepast to save 10% off of your first purchase of a website or a domain. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. But now, it's time for us to take a look at those animals that arrived in the royal collection as diplomatic gifts and/or as specifically ordered ornaments to royal majesty. Let's explore the exotic beasts that filled the Tower of London's royal menagerie. In the early decades of the 12th century, William the Conqueror's fourth son, who was by that point King Henry I, was ruling the dominions left behind by his father. Henry is often named as being the founder of Britain's first zoo. His collection was, however, not housed at the Tower of London. Instead, Henry used the grounds of his manor at Woodstock in Oxfordshire. There, he enclosed the lands around his purpose-built hunting lodge with a wall. And on this site, he is said to have kept an impressive collection of beasts. The chronicler William of Malmesbury wrote that Henry, quote, was extremely fond of the wonders of distant countries, begging with great delight, as I have observed, from foreign kings, lions, leopards, lynxes or camels, animals which England does not produce. He had a park called Woodstock, in which he used to foster his favourites of this kind. He had placed there also a creature called a porcupine, sent to him by William of Montpellier. There is some suggestion that Henry chose the grounds of his hunting lodge as the ideal place to house these beasts because his intention was to use them for the same purpose. Namely, he wanted to hunt them. It was Henry's great-grandson, King John, who moved the royal menagerie to the Tower of London at the start of the 13th century. Then, in 1235, John's son, who was by then ruling as King Henry III, was given 3 beasts that are described as being leopards. However, as these beasts are said to connect to the animals that are found on the English king's crest, it is thought they might instead have been lions. In either case, these beasts were presented to Henry by the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II. Frederick II had his own incredibly impressive menagerie, and he made this gift of beasts in the same year that he married Henry's sister, Isabella. Marriages like this, and gifts of exotic beasts, served the same purpose. They were done to forge and strengthen diplomatic relations between two rulers, and it would go on in this way. In 1252, the King of Norway gifted his friend, ally and trading partner Henry with a, quote, white bear, thought likely to have been a polar bear, Apparently, this beast was tethered with a, quote, stout cord. It was then taken out so that it could swim and catch fish in the River Thames. In 1255, Louis IX of France gave Henry an elephant to add to his royal menagerie. The collection of royal beasts were starting to cost the crown a fairly substantial amount, and so the sheriffs of London were, shall we say, voluntold that they would have the responsibility of creating new, purpose-built accommodation for this creature at the Tower of London. Matthew Paris travelled from St Albans to see this beast for himself. He wrote how, quote, "About this time an elephant was sent to England by the French king as a present to the King of the English. We believe that this elephant was the only elephant ever seen in England, or even in the countries this side of the Alps. Thus, people flocked together to see the novel sight." He also asserted that the animal was around 10 years old. It is, however, unclear how he knew this. He stated that it had a rough hide rather than fur, was 10 feet tall, and used its trunk to eat and drink. Paris also drew what he saw. You may notice the very evident knees on display in this image. Paris made a point of noting their presence, as it had previously been believed that elephants did not have knees. Unfortunately for this elephant, the lack of knowledge extended beyond its kneecaps. This elephant's new keepers were utterly unaware of how to care for it properly. They erroneously fed it meat, and in order to ensure its warmth, they gave it a gallon of wine to drink a day. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this elephant died just a couple of years after arriving at the Tower of London. In the next reign, that of Henry III's son, King Edward I, the Tower complex expanded. The outer curtain wall was added, and with it, new royal lodgings. The moat was expanded, sluice gates were put in, and the store of animals was moved to a newly built home at the western entrance to the tower. Edward also added animals to his collection for its new home. This area became known as the Lion Tower. The Lion Tower no longer stands, having been demolished in the 19th century. Nevertheless, this did mean that during those intervening centuries, most of the visitors to this royal palace and fortress would find themselves entering past a collection of exotic, frequently ferocious, often loud, and probably hungry animals. Now, I don't know about you, but that might make me think twice before going to complain to the king, or perhaps asking him for a favour. And perhaps that was the point. During an excavation of the tower's moat, a variety of animal remains were found. There were remains from dogs, leopards, and Barbary lions, meaning they originated from northwest Africa. All of these were uncovered during this excavation. The presence of dogs within these remains is perhaps an indication that the exotic animals were being put to work entertaining crowds by being baited, i.e., they were made to fight the dogs and or each other. When 2 of the Barbary lion skulls were subsequently radiocarbon dated, they were found to connect to 2 different periods in history. According to a British Library blog post, quote, "The skulls were dated to 1280 to 1385 and to 1420 to 1480, suggesting that these particular lions were the private exhibits of either Edward I, II or III in the first instance, or of the Lancastrian Henry VI or Yorkist Edward IV in the second. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, the menagerie was opened up to the paying public. If, however, you didn't want to part with actual money, admission could be obtained for free, I suppose, if you brought a dog or a cat that could be fed to the animals on display. Next, towards the start of his reign as King of England, James I commissioned an expansion of these enclosures. An exercise yard was built for the lions, as well as a, quote, great cistern. This held drinking and bathing water for them. In addition, a viewing platform was added that would further improve the visitor experience. Later in the reign, certainly by 1622, while lions and leopards did remain the principal draw for visitors to the royal menagerie, in these last years of James I's reign, the tower was also playing host to a variety of other creatures. This included a couple of pumas, a tiger, a jackal, and 3 eagles. And then in 1623, another elephant appeared, this one being a gift to James from the King of Spain. This king also sent advice on the ideal form of care for this diplomatic gift. Once again, meat was the suggested food for this herbivore, and wine by the gallon for the winter months. The keeping of all these animals in close quarters, in perhaps not purpose-built enclosures, often too small, unsurprisingly did lead to accidents. In 1686, one Mary Jenkinson reportedly tried to stroke a lion's paw and was apparently able to. The lion, in response, mauled her arm. Mary would die from her injuries. One potential eyewitness to this death was a resident of the Lion Office in the Tower. He was there in the late 16th century. His name was Edward Francis, and as you can see, he features in one of the panels that stands outside the Tower of London today. Edward Francis was enslaved by Thomas Dimmock, the keeper of the lions at the Tower. This was in spite of the fact that slavery was not recognised in English law. Nevertheless, Edward Francis was certainly not anomalous. In 1687, Dimmock took out an advert in the London Gazette, asking for help locating and retrieving a roughly 16-year-old runaway, quote, black boy with a silver collar about his neck engraven Thomas Dimmock at the Lion Office. So he had a collar on with Thomas Dimmock's name on it and the location he should be returned to. Thomas Dimmock was offering a 2-guinea reward for anybody who brought the boy back. It is possible that this advert is referring to Edward Francis, and thus is evidence that even at this early stage he was trying to escape. If it is him that is being referred to here, then he must have been returned by some means, because at the start of 1692, Edward Francis was accused of poisoning Thomas Dimmock and his family with rat poison. When brought before the Constable of the Tower of London, Edward Francis confessed, stating that his intention had been to make the family sick, perhaps so they would be sufficiently distracted so that he could attempt to escape from them. Edward Francis later confessed that he believed he would be freed if the family died. Dimmock's wife, already a sickly woman, was given poisoned food. She died in 1691. Dimmock then remarried, and Edward Francis apparently continued his campaign of poisoning. Edward Francis was, however, not prosecuted for either murder or for attempted murder. Instead, he was convicted of a misdemeanour, imprisoned and fined. He, or someone on his behalf, promptly paid the 10-groat fine, because he was freed from prison in the June of 1692. Whether he was ever free of the Dimmocks is, however, unknown. During the 18th century, as the menagerie drew ever-increasing, frankly, extraordinary numbers of visitors, scientists sought to find ways to understand and categorise the collection. In certain cases, necropsies were performed on animals that died, and this process helped develop the scientific understanding of the beasts in question. By the start of the 19th century, the menagerie was in the charge of headkeeper Alfred Copps, and he was a zoologist. Copps enlarged the menagerie. Indeed, he brought in hundreds of his own animals, new animals, to add to the exhibits. Other animals were born in the tower while he was in charge, and he approached their care and feeding with the scientific knowledge that he had access to. In short, this was probably the very best time to be an animal in the royal menagerie. Copps himself reportedly had a very near miss, though, because he was nearly killed in the coil of a boa constrictor. Indeed, his colleagues had to step in to save his life. The popularity of the Royal Menagerie as a tourist attraction would soon be overshadowed by a few factors. Concerns about the way that animals were being treated, and more generally about animal cruelty as a whole, were firmly entering the public consciousness. So much so that the RSPCA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, would be founded in 1824. Additionally, the Royal Menagerie was, as it had always been, expensive to maintain. It generated considerable disruption on the site, a site that was also, after all, among other things, an active duty military garrison. The noise, smell, mess, and chaos, with animals attacking visitors, tower staff, their families, and each other, simply became too much. And so, at the end of 1831, the Constable of the Tower, Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, arranged for many of the tower's animals to be transferred to a specialised site in Regent's Park. Today, we know that location as London Zoo. Within a few years, the tower's menagerie was empty. All of its animals had been rehomed either in zoos or in circuses. Today, the tower's only official beasts are the ravens, who probably deserve their own video. They still very much rule the roost, pun intended. The yeoman warders and their families who live within the complex do also have their own collection of domestic pets. The Royal Menagerie is memorialised across the Tower of London site through a collection of wire sculptures by the artist Kendra Haste. If you have visited the Tower of London in the last decade or so, then you would have had the chance to spot some of these sculptures. If you did, do you remember what beasts you saw represented there? So what do you think of the history of the Royal Menagerie, of the animals that were housed within it, of the care they received? How effective do you think it might have been as an expression of royal majesty and power during its period of operation? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comments section underneath this video. I'd also love it if you could pop an emoji or a social glyph in the comments too, because that will help to boost the engagement. And the more engagement a video gets, the more YouTube shares it out, and that should in turn help to grow our community. I think it's fairly obvious that we should do some animal emoji or social glyph this time. Perhaps your favourite animal, or maybe your favourite story of an animal that we have discussed today. You can find me elsewhere on social media. I will leave links to the place you can find me on the internet in my description box. Please do follow me over on some or all of those so we can continue this conversation and start some others. I do hope that you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please do share it with your friends. And if you like my channel, let some pals know about it. You can tell me this video was the one for you in particular by hitting the thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel, and if you think you're subscribed, have a little check now, just to make sure that YouTube hasn't mysteriously unsubscribed you against your will. While you are there, checking, subscribing, maybe resubscribing, please do hit the bell icon that sits beside the subscribe button, and then select all in the drop-down menu that will appear, and that way YouTube claims they will tell you when I've next uploaded, but also when I'm next planning to go live, which I do, to talk about the history news, and I know you're not going to want to miss that. We have, of course, got our failsafe. If you head over to my website, which will be linked, www.katrinamarchant.com, if you head to the contact page, you will find a box. Put your email address in the box. That will add you to my mailing list. And then once a week, I will send you an email to let you know what I've been up to, and also to send you any useful links that you might want for my content for the coming days. I hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.